Hello and welcome to my crafting podcast. My name's Beth and today I'm going to be taking you through what I've been making in the last few months. I have quite a few smaller accessory projects to show you. I have one finished garment that I am actually wearing now, but we'll talk about it later, and a couple of Christmas presents that I have finished. So stay tuned and I'll get right into it. I'm going to start off with some finished objects. I have quite a few small things to get through, so hopefully I can whip through these. Firstly, I'm going to talk about some scrap projects that I've been making. I have self-drafted 2 zipper pouches using some scrap yarn that was in my stash. This is my first one. I used the leftovers of Sanna's Garn Tin Line in the colour Putty, which is 10-15. I used size 4mm needles, and it took me 6 days. I held the yarn double for this pouch and I used a stitch called seersucker stitch, which I really enjoyed doing. It kind of made this scale texture, which I found really fascinating, and it was quite a fun repeat to do. I knitted it until I ran out of yarn, which is why it is this size. It's probably a little big, but I like it anyway. And this was actually my first time installing both a zipper and a liner. I'm just going to clip the mic on a sec to show you, but this one does get a little stuck, but it was my first one. And inside I've got this lovely flower fabric. Really pleased with how this one turned out, considering it was my first one. It was getting a lot more stuck, so maybe I just needed to wear the zipper down where it was catching on the threads. I didn't want to be messing around with the zip, so I made the pouch size to fit the zip that I could get. So that's what I didn't do, any cutting of zips or anything like that. And then I used the Delphi purse pattern on Ravelry, which is a free pattern, to figure out how to install the liner and zip. The pattern isn't in English, but I used a bit of Google Translate to figure out the nuances. It's also got lots of pictures on it, so it was quite nice to follow. So that's the first one. For my second self-drafted pouch, I did use a similar technique. So I had the size of zipper already. I made a tiny little test swatch, and then I calculated then how many stitches I needed all the way around. So this one is knitted in Knitting for Olive, soft silk mohair and merino in the colour Blue Tit. I used the same 4mm needles, and this one took me 8 days. They're quite all-consuming projects because the way the repeats work in the patterns just makes you want to keep going. This one I've made in a diamond pattern. There we go. It's just a really pretty kind of pearl bump diamond pattern, which I love. I have kind of promised my mum this one, and I really like it, but it's fine. I'll make one for myself. I do have because these are scrap project. These are great scrap projects, and I do have the yarn set aside to make myself a lilac version, and I think I might go with this pattern because it's just really pleasing. But yes, installed a zipper onto this one as well, which is much smoother than my first attempt. So, and then the lining is also in this one. Very pretty. So the only thing, I was really cheeky. The only things that I have bought for these 2 pouches were the zips. Obviously the yarn was all scrap, and I managed to pester my mum into giving me the lining fabric. My mum is a quilter and a textile artist, and she has so much fabric in stash, which is great if you just want like a little bit for lining. When I'm home, I just take a tally of all the products that need lining and then kind of gather up little bits. So yes, that's what I did for this one. I had my own fabric stash for this first one, but the second one I did borrow from my mum. So thanks, Mum. So actually, it's quite nice that I'm now giving her a finished pouch back as a as a thank you for letting me have the fabric. So there you go. Let's call it even. So yes, these are my self-drafted pouches, which I'll definitely be making more of. They're so fun and quite a cheap project because the zips are not very expensive. I have one crochet project which I don't have with me actually, so I'll just put some pictures up. I made my mum some patch pockets for her cardigan, which she requested. We picked the colours out of my stash. I was quite limited on what I could offer because I don't actually have that much cotton in different colours. And I made these lovely solid squares, which she then sewed onto her cardigan. And they look really snazzy. I'm quite pleased with how they turned out. I used a 3mm hook, and these just took me one day to make while I was home for a little bit. Checked in with her at every step and we figured out the sizes, so it was a nice project to do while I was home. I have another crochet project that I have made. This is another self-drafted project. I made a hanging planter for my window. I made it out of Lily's Sugar and Cream worsted. Again, this is a scrap project. I already have 2 planters in the individual colours. So one in potpourri ombre and one in denim, and this one is the combination of the 2 because I had scraps left over. I made it on a 4mm hook and it took me a day to make. I kicked it out in a day, which was nice. I really love these. My plants are very happy sitting in the window, so they turn out really great. So yeah, this is my little hanging pot, which has joined the 2 that were already on my window. I'm really glad I managed to get 3 out of the yarn that I had, and I've been really putting off using it up because originally I was going to make something silly like 6 of them, but I don't love this yarn to work with, so I was really not looking forward to making a ton. But I already had the leftovers from the other 2, so I pushed myself to make 1 more, and I think they sit really nicely in the window. They look great, they're functional, and I'm very happy. I've almost used the yarn. One of the ones that are already in the window, the ties are actually too short, so I think with the last bit of the yarn I have left, I'm going to redo the ties on the other one to make them longer, because at the moment I have to add a little S-hook to drop the plant low enough in the window so it's not blocked by the blind, and I think that should finish off what I have left of this yarn, which would be fantastic. But I really love the design of these. It's just a basic basket, so you start with a circle, knit into the back loop for the turning row, and then just carry on up. Very happy with my crochet hanging planter. The next project I have to talk about is my Arios socks by Lisa Schmidt. I've been working on these in Somerset yarns in the colour Anastasia and a Lang Yarwool yarn in like a turquoise colour. I've been using my 2.25mm small circumference needles, and these took me 22 days. These have been on the podcast before, but as a work in progress, and now they are finished. I love these. These are fabulous. I still love this pattern. This is the second time I've made the Arios socks. This is the first time I've made them this long and this big, but the repeat is so fun and engaging. I just really enjoy it, and I definitely love to keep this in my arsenal of socks that are lovely. I think the colour combination of these is fantastic. I can't wait to give them to the recipient. These are one of my Christmas presents, and I really hope they fit. They're just fabulous. I really like them. I definitely recommend this pattern for anyone who likes making socks. These are a really lovely lacy pattern. I modified these to make a 76 stitch circumference. That wasn't too difficult to do. I just added like another stitch in each of the repeats, and it worked perfectly. So yeah, great one that I could modify for bigger and smaller sizes, and they look fabulous. So really pleased with these. Speaking of Christmas socks, I have another pair. These are the Cozy Autumn socks by This Handmade Life. I made these in Life of the Long Grass in the colour Night. I used the same 2.25mm small circumference needle, and I worked on these for 24 days. These were another addictive pair of socks. You might be able to tell, I really love a lace sock. I just find them so engaging, and the repeats are never that many. I think this one has like a 12 row repeat, so you get quite into just knocking out each block of repeats, and these especially are stunning. They make like a faux braid without actually needing to do any cabling. These are all just done with yarn overs and slanted decreases. These are absolutely stunning. These are actually for my sister-in-law who has very similarly sized feet to me. I'm gonna struggle to gift these because I absolutely love them. These ones I actually made a slip stitch heel just for a change, but also I have a very specific preferences. In a solid colour sock, I prefer the way a slip stitch heel looks, but in a duo coloured sock, I prefer the way a German short rail heel looks. So that's tends to be how I prefer to make my socks. So I've gone for a slip stitch heel and I think it looks fab. I really want to make a pair of these for myself. Excellent pattern, beautiful socks. I wish I didn't have to give them away. There will be a pair of these coming for me after Christmas, I'm sure. This yarn is also gorgeous. I found this in the yarn shop Loop London, which is north of me, but it turns out this yarn is also dyed in the Irish county that my parents live. So this is also local yarn to my family, and it just happened to be in London. And it's great because my sister-in-law is Irish from that county, so I'm gifting her a pair of Irish yarn socks from where she's from. So that's a happy bonus. Moving away from socks, but sticking with Christmas presents, I have a Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. I knitted this in Somerset yarn in the colour Christian on 3mm needles, and it took me 25 days to make. This is my very first Musselburgh hat. I have been wanting to make this pattern for quite a while. I've been looking for a really lovely squishy hat pattern because all of the hats I've made so far in my knitting journey have just been single lined and not fitted very well. This one gives a double lining. It's a fully double lined hat, and in fact the brim ends up being quadruple lined. It's very flexible with regards to what yarn you want to use. There's a whole chart for what gauge you need. You don't need to make a gauge swatch because you figure out the size as you go. So it's just a really lovely pattern. I actually cast this on so I could knit it predominantly while I was visiting my brother and sister-in-law in Switzerland. So I just knitted the first round of increases and then stuck it on a single needle and off I went. I just brought it with me. I had obviously 2 planes, and my partner and I also went to Liechtenstein, so that was about a 6-hour round trip. So I had lots of knitting time, plus the evenings while I was there, and I got through a good bit of it, but I didn't realise how long of a commitment this was going to be. You knit it, actually show you. You knit basically a long tube and then you turn one half inside of each other. And I kept having to measure it because it was taking so long and it didn't visibly look like I was making any progress, even though I was. So, it was just, it did get a bit sloggy because it is just in the round and you have to pass over 4 markers to keep marking where you did your increase and decreases. It's perfect travel knitting because I can sit on a train or a flight and it's just, you just knit away, you don't have to pay attention to it. But as soon as I was home, I really just needed this to be done because I was so bored of it, which is a shame because it makes a really lovely hat. And I'd really like one, but I don't know if I can do this to myself again. I don't know if I have the mental fortitude to go through that again. Yeah, it just makes such a lovely hat. It's really squishy, but I don't think I'll be able to make one of these for myself unless, you know what, unless I go on a similar trip, unless there's flights and trains and everything involved and I just need a project that's gonna pass the time. But excellent pattern. I love how flexible it is with the yarns and very, very mindless. It just takes quite a long time. So that's my Musselburgh hat. Okay, these are the last pair of socks, I promise. I had a very productive sock knitting few months this month. My next pair of socks are a pair of Satyr socks by Maja Carlson. I made these socks entirely out of scrap, which I'm really proud of. They're made of Somerset Yarns Anastasia and Night in the Long Grass Night, which are the yarns that I made the last 2 socks out of. I made them on my same 2.25mm small circumference needle, and these ones took me 11 days. And these are also for me. I managed to squeeze in a pair of my own socks the last few months, which is awesome because I've been exclusively knitting Christmas presents as socks. Very pleased to be able to make a pair for myself. But the reason these socks came about is because I was waiting on some measurements for my next Christmas sock, which is my partner's, and I made a last minute decision to go to oUnravelled in Farnham, which is the first time I've been to a yarn festival. I was really excited to go, and I just happened to be on annual leave from work. So as a bonus, I was also able to go on the Friday. So it was not as busy as I imagined it would have been on the Saturday. But because I was going from London, so that's multiple tubes and a train, I needed a travel project. So I cast on these socks, which are beautiful. They're so pretty, and I'm really, really happy. I used up almost all of the yarn I had. I have 2 grams of each of these colours now. And that's the reason I had to put in the stripe, because I didn't quite have enough of the pink to do the full foot. I don't mind it. Like, would I prefer for there not to be a stripe? Sure, but I would prefer also to have finished socks. So here we are. So yes, these came about because I was waiting for a foot measurement from my partner, and I needed a travel project. I knitted these at a 30th birthday party that was hosted in a pub. And then I knitted these on the train to Farnham on the way to oUnravelled and on the way back. And then I got the measurements. So I really needed to free up my 2.25mm needle. So then this became a bit of a speed run so that I could have that needle back. I was only going to do one sock and then take a break, do the other project and then come back. But the first one took so little time, I just decided to knock both of them out so that I could have the pair. And I'm so glad I did. I absolutely love the motif at the top. It's just so pretty. And yeah, despite the stripes, I love how these colours go together. I originally didn't think about pairing these two, and then I had the scrap yarn balls together in the box that I keep all of my sock yarn. And I was like, they look great together. I should make a pair of socks. So I grabbed them both, I weighed them. It was tight. I had just enough to make my size of a sock. And then I looked through my free sock patterns to see if there's anything that I would like. I have heavily modified the Satyr Socks pattern, the original one. So in the original, there is a Latvian braid at the cuff, which I omitted. There's also a different heel. And then obviously I have added the stripe. So they don't super look like the Satyr socks from the picture, but I think they're really good. I also modified the pattern for it to be 72 stitches, and that seems to be the size of sock that I prefer. I can't believe how fast it took to make them. 11 days, that's quite impressive. I was off though, I didn't have any work, so that also makes sense why I had lots of time to knit them. But it was a nice treat in amidst all the Christmas present knitting to just make a pair of socks for myself, so very happy. My next finished object is my Forget-Me-Not sweater by Florence Miller. I made a whole video about picking my first colourwork jumper, and then I also made an autumn-winter plans video where I showed how far I'd gotten with it, and now here it is in its finished iteration. I used the Knitting for Olive Merino in the colours Marzipan, Artichoke Purple and Dusty Violet. I used a 4mm needle for the body and 3.5mm for the ribbing and the edging. I've made a size D, which is a size 4, and this one took me 38 days to make. The other thing to note with the yarn is I held all of the colours double to make it up to a DK weight. I am really happy with how this jumper turned out. I was making a size smaller to begin with, a size C, and I'd got quite far with it. I'd finished the yoke, I'd joined under the arms, knitted about an inch, and I was halfway through an arm, and then I decided to try it on, and it was so snug. It was really uncomfortable. I was umming and ahhing if it would get a bit bigger with blocking, but the arms were just so uncomfortable. So I made the heartbreaking decision to pull it all out and start again, which was actually a good call because it meant that I could have another go at this yoke. And this is the first time I've done garment colourwork knitting. So the first time I did the yoke, I couldn't figure out how to like tension multiple strands. So yeah, I had multiple yarns to manage at the same time, and some of the stitches just looked really gappy, especially the ones in the middle of the flowers. And because I ripped it out, I then had to do it again, and I paid much more attention and learned from the first time I did it, and I think it's turned out really well. I'm really happy with it. It looks far neater than I thought it would, to be honest. And this material has softened up so much. Post blocking, it's so lovely. I'm quite a sensitive, like my skin is very sensitive, and this is causing me no problem. I'm wearing like a sports bra underneath this, and it is causing me no issues at all. It also feels quite sturdy, which is nice. I feel like this is gonna last, which is a relief because I put a lot of effort into it, so I do want it to last. I'd really like to use this yarn again for another garment. I'm quite keen. I do have a fair amount left, but I don't think it's a garment quantity. Or if it is, it'd be a t-shirt, and I don't think I want a t-shirt in this wool. I really love the Ditty for Olive merino now. I'm a total convert. The pattern by Florence Miller was an absolute joy to work through. Both the written parts of the pattern and the chart were really easy to decode, really nice to knit through. There was also a helpful schematic, so I could check if I was on track, like not only with the bust circumference, but also like the armhole depth and the measurement from the neck down to the armpit. This schematic was really useful to help me figure out what size I needed to make post the making one too small incident. So that was really helpful. The one thing I didn't realise before starting, because I haven't done this larger portion of colourwork before, is how many floats I would have to catch. I didn't recognise in the chart what that would entail, and I did have to catch quite a lot of floats, which you can see a little bit coming through, but they're not so noticeable now it's been blocked. It's not something that super bothers me, but it is something I'd really like to get better at, and it is something I would now look for in other patterns, because especially if it's an intricate pattern, like there are bonuses, like for a more intricate pattern there tends to be less float catching because you're switching colours. I hadn't realised that a simpler colourwork pattern means you're probably going to be catching floats more because there are larger gaps between the different colours. So going forward, I'm able to recognise that and maybe find the more intricate stuff less intimidating. I'd be really keen to do another colourwork jumper and not be so afraid of which patterns to pick based on how they look. So I have no regrets on picking this. It was a helpful skill to learn, but I think I'm very grateful that I now have the knowledge of what different colourwork charts entail with like yarn management and catching floats. I did make a couple of modifications to this pattern. I did all of my ribbing in 1x1 twisted rib, which I think she actually has on her other sample. The other thing that's on her second sample that I did is I made a folded collar rather than that kind of funnel neck. I just prefer a folded collar. I don't like things around my neck, and also the underneath of my chin is one of my sensitive spots, so it's just safer to have a bit of a crew neck. So that's what I've done. I also had to shorten both the arm length and the body length by a substantial amount. I think I just must have smaller proportions than Florence does, but that's an easy modification. But the biggest modification that I'm also most proud of is I added a colourwork section to each sleeve, and I designed these based on, I designed these based on the smaller flower motif that was in the pattern. I just used the chart and stitch fiddle to make a little motif, knowing what stitches I had, and then I had to account for where they would go to make the sleeves the right length. So I was really pleased. There was quite a lot of maths and designing and stitch fiddling to figure out how to do it and make it the right length. But the sleeves hit so perfectly, and I'm really pleased with how the motif came out. I would like to do it again for other jumpers. I think it's quite a fun thing to work out. I also caught the floats much neater in the sleeves than I did for the yoke, so I definitely got better. Like I can visibly see the improvement as I go further down this jumper. Overall, I'm really happy with how this jumper turned out, and I'm excited to get into another colourwork project with a lot more skills. I have one more finished object to talk about, although technically it's 4. I have made some mini Christmas jumpers, the Pattern by Svenja Knits on Instagram. I made these out of various Lang Yarn Yavol colours on 3mm needles, and I held all the colours double. I worked on these over 2 weeks, but kind of on and off, so I don't have a set number of days of how long these took me. I've been working on these as a present for my mum. She requested them a few months ago, and I'm planning to give them to her as her birthday present so that she'll have them for Christmas. I modified the pattern, the Svenja Knits pattern, which is a pattern on Instagram, so they all had Christmas motifs on, and I actually did these in colourwork rather than duplicate stitch, other than this one, which is just an embroidered pattern. So one at a time, I've got a green tree, which is the embroidered one, a cream tree, this one is knitted on with some embellishment, a snowflake, and I have a reindeer. These are so cute, but I'm so happy to have these finished. These were a special request from my mum. She wanted 4, she wanted them in Christmassy colours. I've made a couple of these mini jumpers before because they are great scrap projects, and I've been wanting to make a few more of my own Christmas ornaments. As much as these have been fun as a design process, as an actual project, I just don't love them. I have to make them on magic loop, which is not, I really don't get along with magic loop. The way I decided to hold the yarn double on 3mm needles also made them quite stiff, so I get like a little bit of hand pain from doing these. Now that these are finished, I am going to take a break on the the mini jumper train, but I'm really happy to have these ready for my mum's birthday. So I'm actually going to put these in the pouch and basically have them gift wrapped by the pouch, which is nice. So I hope she likes them. We'll see. I feel like I've been talking for a really long time already, but that's it for finished objects, and I just have 2 whips. I technically do have 3, but I'm not going to talk about my blanket today. I have not made any progress. I think I've done a total of 3 rows. I'm not going to talk about it in today's episode, so we'll take a pause on the blanket for now. The first whip I have to show you is another pair of socks. These are my last pair of Christmas socks. Well, technically penultimate, but I'll talk about that next time. I am making for the first time a self-drafted pair of socks. I'm making them in various Lang Yarns Yavol colours, mostly out of scrap, but I did have to buy one colour. I'm making these on my 2.25 small circumference needle. They're self-drafted because I was looking for a very specific motif. After my Seta socks, the whole colourwork sock thing had been a bit demystified, and I'd gotten used to multiple colours in this jumper. So I decided to have my hand at designing a sock, and I want to show you because I have one finished. Here it is. I am so happy with these. These are, I'm calling these my ducky socks. So these socks are for my partner. We are incredibly cute, vomit worthy, I would say. And when I'm feeling down, my partner says, "What's up, duck?" And in response, I have to quack. Yeah, it's gross, I know, vomit, gross. Anyway, so I really wanted to make him a pair of socks with ducks on, and I couldn't. I trawled Ravelry. I even looked for paid patterns. I tend to not buy sock patterns because there are so many free ones out there and they're so easy to modify. But I opened up the search. I was like, I really want a pair of duck socks. There must be a pair of duck socks out there. I couldn't find any that sparked joy. So I took to Stitch Fiddle and Google, and I found this little pixelated duck, and I put him into Stitch Fiddle, and I made it work. And then I knitted him. I'm gonna show you close up, because how cool is that? I designed that. As someone who only learned to knit socks this year, and who only learned to knit colour work a few months ago. I'm so proud of myself. I can't wait to do the other sock. In theory, I should have cast this sock on already, but I wasn't really feeling up to knitting yesterday. As you can probably hear, I'm not entirely 100% well. I'm very sinusy and gross and have been for about a week. I didn't feel like casting on the tube the second sock once I'd finished, so I didn't. I'm delighted with how these are coming along, and I'm sure there will be a finished pair on the next video, so stay tuned for that. I've never written a pattern before, and obviously this is just a vanilla sock with like a 2x2 rib and a German short row heel. Is it worth writing a whole pattern for this sock, or is it worth to just document the chart? Can you put just charts on Ravelry? I don't know. I'd love some advice for people who have designed things and want to share them. I would totally just put this online for free. It's just a silly pixelated duck and a vanilla sock, so I don't necessarily think it needs like a paid for a pattern or anything. I think it'd be fine for free. But yeah, is it worth writing up a whole sock pattern, or should I just do a chart, or should I not bother? Like, is it just me that thinks these ducks are adorable and no one else would ever want to make a little duck sock? Anyway, I'd love for your advice, so if you wouldn't mind leaving me a comment about what you think, that would be hugely helpful. The second and last whip I have to talk to you about are my Spoonie mittens by Skein Dae Knits. I'm using quite a few yarns for this. I'm using the Lichen and Lace Mini in Bouquet. I'm using Ithaca Alpaca 1 in the colour 54, and then I'm using a Langyarns Yarwool blue colour. I'm using a 2.5mm needle for the cuff, and then I've swapped to a 3mm for the rest of the mitt. This is how far I've got with it. Please excuse all the tails because I'm knitting with 3 yarns. It doesn't look like much. Obviously I'll be showing you a picture of what they're supposed to look like. I'm not done too badly. In the next row I'll put the thumb stitches on hold. I'm quite pleased. I wanted to replicate in the pattern. They have like a speckly colourful yarn as the background, and this Bouquet yarn is perfect. I really liked it. In the shop I thought it would be a lot darker, but it does the job. It does exactly what I wanted it to do. This is actually a second attempt. I got pretty much this far with my first attempt, and I was just using the Langyarns Yarwool yarn on its own, obviously with the Lichen and Lace, but without the Ithaca. I also was using 0.5mm smaller, so I was doing the body of the mitten on 2.5mm. The person I'm making this Christmas present for does have smaller hands than me, but I tried it on and it was like a child size. It was just too small. But I don't have a 2.75 long needle to do the tip and the thumb in, so I jumped all the way to a 3. I also just didn't like how this was looking held single. It looked really stringy, and I went to Loop in London and tried to find a lace weight yarn that wasn't a mohair or a surrey, so I could bulk up the weight that was in a similar colour. So I think I've done quite well with the colour matching. It's a little darker, like a little muted, more muted than the Yarwool, but knitted up together, I think it looks really nice. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I like the thickness of this. Obviously I haven't gotten to the thumb yet, so I'm not able to try it on, but it does feel a lot better. Again, I'm hoping to have these finished by the next update podcast. If I get both these and the ducky socks finished, that would be all of my Christmas presents finished. Really early, so that would be amazing. I can get back to knitting stuff for myself. I have a confession to make. I have quite a few acquisitions to get through. And I know I've said in previous videos that I wanted to knit down my stash to be ready for the Knit and Stitch show, but a couple of things happened. One, I've been to Switzerland to see my brother and sister-in-law, and I found a beautiful yarn. 2, I went to oUnravelled unexpectedly, and 3, I then wanted to get things to pair with the stuff I'd bought so that I could make them in garments. And on top of that, I also bought yarn to make bits of Christmas presents. With that explanation out of the way, I have acquired quite a bit of yarn over the last 2 months. In addition to the stuff you've already seen, I also have a fair amount to show you. So while I was in Switzerland, in Basel, I went to a knitting shop called oUnravelled. It's a beautiful shop and it has so many different yarn selections. It was a beautiful place to go and browse. And in that shop, I saw Noro's Silk Garden Sock Solo for the first time. Now, this is not a yarn I had really been drawn to when I'd seen it in podcasts and like on online shops. I thought the speckles looked kind of weird and most of the colours came out quite grey and like beigey with the colourful speckles. I also didn't like the sound of how the yarn is like thick and thin. I thought it would be a bit of a nuisance to work with, and I like my things to look a bit polished. So it's not a yarn that I thought I would enjoy. But I saw it in the shop. I saw it in the colour S84, which is this beautiful pink mauvey colour with blue and pink and purple and green flecks. And I absolutely fell in love. I can, as you probably tell by this jumper, I love pastels, I love purple. And I fell in love, and I was there with my partner and I stood in the shop just going like, oh no, I didn't think I would love this yarn and I do, and this is so annoying. But luckily they had plenty of it, and I looked up very quickly on my Ravelry queue what I was hoping to make and managed to match this yarn with a project, which meant I just had to do some quick maths to figure out how many balls I needed and if it was worth it. I had a quick look online to see how much this yarn was like normally compared to how much it was in the shop, and I was really pleasantly surprised. In the shop it was cheaper for me to buy this in Basel in Switzerland than it would have been for me to buy it online, even from a shop in the UK. So that really sealed the deal for me. Like, it was a yarn that I thought was beautiful. I could match it to a project and it was cheaper if I bought it then and there. My partner's really wonderful because I am not very impulsive. I take a long time to decide things. I like to do the maths. I like to wait and see if I'm going to continue to love things. I like to put off buying things. I don't really like to spend money. And my partner has ADHD, is very impulsive, and is very good at reading when I do actually really want something. And he was so supportive. He stood there while I did all the maths. He's also a bit of a maths whiz, so I was like throwing sums at him so I could just double check on how many I'd need and how much that would be and how much that would be if I bought it in the UK. He let me stay in the shop for like almost an hour, like looking around and deciding if I was going to get this yarn, then encouraged me to get it. And I'm so glad I did. This yarn is beautiful and it's also really hard to get in the UK. This Noro tends to get sold out very quickly. It's not anywhere in large quantities, and this particular colour I have not seen. I've never seen this yarn in person, and online it's only just started becoming available. I'm so glad I bought this. I bought 6 balls of it, which should be enough to make the Minot cardigan by Louisa Repkoff. And I'm dying to get this started. Actually, before filming this video, I was waiting for a load of laundry and I was doing some maths to figure out what size I wanted to make. I'm so excited to get this started. Long story short, I bought this yarn. I bought 6 balls of it. I squished it into my rucksack because we were only travelling in rucksacks. Brought it home and made my test square. It is quite a rough yarn because it's got wool, silk, polyamide and mohair in it. And it also is like quite an interesting ply. So I decided, especially after making a test square, that I wanted to pair this with mohair. So I popped down to my local yarn store that sells the Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair with my ball of Noro in hand and my test square. And I bought 2 colours and I made a second test square to try and decide which colours I wanted. This is my swatch for my Minot cardigan with mohair. I think it looks really lovely. I think you can kind of tell that this is 2 yarns, 2 different colours. So I have decided to go with the bottom colour, which is the Knitting for Olives Soft Silk Mohair in Dusty Rose. I think it matches the original colour the closest that I could find, and I really just wanted to keep that original vibe. Like, the colour of the Nora was the thing that drew me to the yarn in the first place, so I didn't want to take away from that too much, but I did want to give the cardigan a little bit more structure and oomph. So these are the colours I've decided to go for. So I'm so excited to get this started on this. I think I might even treat myself to starting today. I do have quite a lot to do this weekend, including editing this video, and I have 2 birthday parties to go to. It's going to be a bit of an ask, but also I'd like to make something for myself at the moment. All of my other whips are other people's, so I think I need to add something into the mix that's just for me. And I'd really like to start this. So as I've already alluded to, I decided to go to oUnravelled very last minute. I was on annual leave and I could go on a Friday, which suits me better because I don't tend to love crowds. I decided to buy myself a ticket and a train, and I headed down. I made a quick plan about what was in my queue and what I'd need so that I wasn't like kind of let loose, which did really help. But I ended up buying only sock yarns, which is fine. I love making socks. I'm definitely going to make them. And all of these socks were on my queue. But yeah, I have a bunch of sock yarn to show you. I want a fun extra actually. Firstly, I have a sock yarn from Creative Anarchy. This colour is Shoreline, and it is an absolutely stunning purple. And I want to make the Fioriti socks by Lisa Schmidt in this colour. Hoping to have a little extra for some colour work on a different sock, but predominantly I want to make the Fioriti socks, which is a lovely kind of pointelle lace design. And I've been looking for the perfect purple to make these socks in. So that's sock yarn number 1. Sock yarn number 2 is this Folkestone Harbour yarn in the colour Moose Brown. It's such a beautiful beige, and I wasn't going to get this until I realised I really want to make the Sinope socks by Audrey Borrego, and I think this would make just such a lovely base colour, and I wouldn't need to worry about what colour I then picked for the colour work. Also, just a nice beige pair of socks with like an accent colour would be really good. I also picked up this mini from Silly Little Sheep Yarns, and if there's enough of it, there's only 10 grams of this, but if there is enough, I would love to pair these together for the Sinope socks. So that's my plan. Back to Silly Little Sheep Yarns, I also got this green mini, which is really lovely. That I'd like to pair with the leftover purple as a like lavender-y pair of socks, hopefully. But we're kind of getting into like long plans now, but I really like this green, so I thought I'd pick it up. And my last sock yarn, which was a total wild card. I have no plans for this, but I just fell in love with the colour, so I just couldn't let it go. It's Rosie's Moments in the colour Bubblegum, which is like a blue, purple and pink combination. So I want to make just the perfect bisexual socks with this yarn. I have no idea of the pattern I want to use. Would this work as a cozy autumn sock? Maybe it would work in that pattern? What do you think? Do I risk it? Do I try a cozy autumn sock in this? Although the cozy autumn sock does look really nice in a dark colour, so I don't know. And the last thing I bought at oUnravelled, which again I did not plan for but makes awesome sense, is I got these beautiful purple heart buttons. I saw these and I really love them, and I thought they would look really great on the Minot cardigan. So that's kind of the idea behind getting those buttons. My granddad was a wood turner. He used to make beautiful bowls and plates and pens and everything, and he used purple heart quite a lot. So when I saw these, I mean, I love the colour purple anyway, but the type of wood just reminded me of him. I'm really glad that I found these, and now I have everything I need for that cardigan. So I really want to cast it on today. I really do. A really fun haul from oUnravelled. I didn't quite know what to expect because I'd never been before, but there were so many stalls And I really took advantage of the talks. I went to both of the on-site talks on Friday. So it was Interwoven, Neurodiversity and the Creative Mind with Christopher Kelly, which I thought was fascinating, and How I Got Comfortable with Colour and How You Can Too with Georgia Farrell. Both of the talks I found really interesting, and it was quite nice to coming out of where all the stalls were and feeling pressured to make decisions and figuring out what to buy and what not to buy, to just like sit down for an hour. I was knitting my sock during both of the talks. It was so nice to just take that break and listen to these really creative people with different perspectives. So I really enjoyed the festival, and I would love to go to the big one. Their big one is in February, and I'm so down. And on that note, thank you so much for hanging out with me while I talk through all of my projects and all of my yarn acquisitions. I really appreciate you listening to me while I yap on. I hope you got some inspiration from some of these projects and patterns. I'll list all of the information down below for each of the patterns, and I will see you next time, hopefully. Bye.